In today's video, we're going to be creating some gorgeous fall projects using wood items from Dollar Tree. I hope you enjoy. For this project, we're going to be using 3 of the wooden pumpkins from Dollar Tree. This one I just bought this year for $1.50. 2 of them I had from last year that were $1.25. And as you can see, the stem is a different shape and size, as well as the pumpkin from this year for $1.50 is just a little bit larger than the $1.25 ones. Using the largest pumpkin first, I'm going to remove that raffia bow and use my hairdryer to heat up that glue so that I'll be able to scrape that off. What doesn't come off, I'm going to use some sandpaper to make sure that I can get that nice and cleaned up and flat. I'm using an acrylic paint in the color Spiced Pumpkin, which just has like a little hint of brown. It's a little bit darker of an orange than just the regular pumpkin. I'm going to paint this entire piece except for the stem and allow that to dry. For one of the smaller pumpkins, I'm going to use an acrylic paint in the color Celery Green, and I am going to apply this very heavily so that I'll be able to paint this in one coat. Again, I'm going to paint this entire piece except for the stem. For the final pumpkin, I'm using an ivory chalk paint that I found at Dollar General. It does seem to have a little bit of a pink hue to it, but I'm okay with that. I applied one coat, and I love that it's a little bit opaque so you could see the wood grain on the bottom layer, but the top layers I did add a second coat. Now, using some antique wax and a dry brush, I'm going to dab most of the antique wax off of my brush and go around this entire pumpkin, around the outside edge as well as those raised portions, to give it a bit of an outline. And I'm also going to paint the stem itself for this ivory pumpkin using that antique wax. For the raised portions, I did use a smaller brush so that I would be able to control the antique wax a little bit more, and as you can see, it really does give this more of a three-dimensional effect. I'll repeat this process for both the celery green pumpkin as well as the spiced pumpkin. Now that the antique wax is dry, we're going to take our largest pumpkin in the orange. We are going to be placing the green pumpkin on top of that. I'm using some Gorilla hot glue, but you could also use a more permanent adhesive if you like. We're going to attach it right there at the stem, trying to keep it as straight as possible. I did hold it there long enough for that glue to set up. Then you can add your ivory pumpkin to the top just like you did the celery green one. I want to create a messy bow. I have 3 different types of ribbon from Dollar Tree. I have a tan plaid, a burlap, and an orange plaid. I'm going to cut the orange plaid to 6 inches, and I'll cut 2 pieces of that. The tan plaid, I'll also cut 2 pieces at 6 inches. And for the burlap color, I'm going to cut 4 pieces at 6 inches. Then I'm just going to cut each of the ends at an angle. You'll also need a piece of twine. Then, laying each of the ribbons in the center on top of the twine, I'm just going to crisscross this pattern. Then I can tie it in the center as tight as I can, double knotting it, cut my excess twine pieces off. Then I can separate my ribbon pieces, and using some hot glue, I'm going to attach this to the very top stem on the top pumpkin, and then I'll separate my ribbon pieces again to fluff my bow out. Using one of Dollar Tree's bamboo cutting boards, I'm going to give this a coat of antique wax on the entire piece, including the outside edges, and allow that to dry. I'm also using a 5-gallon paint stir stick, which you can find at Lowe's, as well as 2 tumbling tower pieces from Dollar Tree. I'm going to hot glue the 2 tumbling tower pieces together, and then I'm going to place some hot glue on that and place this flush to the end of the handle of the paint stick, so it should look like this. I used a brown acrylic paint to paint the tumbling tower pieces, the outside edges, and then this piece on the side where the tumbling tower pieces are. I did not paint the back side. Now that everything is dry, I'm going to find roughly the center of the cutting board and place some hot glue on the bottom of the paint stick and the tumbling tower pieces. Line that up with my mark. It is set back a little bit from the center, so it should look something like this. Now I'm going to turn it over to the side where it is not painted. And we're going to be putting our 3 pumpkins on top of this. Now, as I set it on there, you can see a little bit of the handle of the paint stir stick at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and paint that the same spiced pumpkin color so that it will blend in with that bottom pumpkin. Once that was dry, I realized that I just didn't feel like it was stable enough just by using that hot glue to hold the paint stick and the tumbling tower pieces. So I am going to pre-drill a hole from the bottom of the cutting board into one of the tumbling tower pieces so that I'll be able to put this flathead screw in there. I wasn't able to countersink the screw, so a little bit of it did stick out. To avoid that screw from scratching any surface that I put it on, I did use these round felt stickers to place in each corner. It will give me enough height that the screw will not touch any type of surface. Now I'm going to add the 3 pumpkins to the top. Now I did paint the back side of the pumpkin, so no matter how this sets, everything will look nice and finished. Because the pumpkins are stacked on top of each other, they're not going to sit level on the paint stick. The glue is only going to be applied to the center of the orange one and the stem of the green one. I'm using Gorilla Hot Glue, but you could also use a more permanent adhesive. Applying the glue only to the back side where it's going to touch the paint stick. Then I can line this up, make sure it is straight, and this project is finished. For this project, we're using one of Dollar Tree's wooden leaf signs as well as some Waverly Antique Wax. I'm going to give this one coat. This is really going to bring out that beautiful wood grain and give it a nice stained look. Once that has dried, I'm going to go ahead and add a twine hanger to it. Now, I did want my twine hanger to be a little bit longer than what originally came on it. I'm just going to double knot that at the end and cut the excess off. I have this sign that I found at Target. Now, if you can't find a sign like this, you could always paint the center of your leaf with some black chalk paint and use either a decal or a stencil. I'm going to go ahead and hot glue this to the center of the leaf. And then using some Dollar Tree fall ribbon, I didn't even measure this. I'm just going to take the shorter piece, fold it in half again, cut the ends at an angle to dovetail both ends. You'll also need a piece of twine. And taking the larger piece of ribbon, I'm going to fold one side over and see where they overlap. Then I can add a bead of hot glue to glue these 2 end pieces together. Once that sets up, it's going to look like a little loop. You can then take your shorter piece, pinch it in the middle, pull it to one side, so that'll be the tail for our bow. Take your loop and pinch it together in the middle. Take your twine, wrap it around the loop, add your tails to the back, and then you can double knot that on the back side. Then you can use that excess twine to either tie it to the stem at the bottom of the leaf, or you could actually cut that excess twine off and glue it like I did. For this project, I'm using a 10-inch wood round. You can find some at Dollar Tree. This one actually came from Hobby Lobby. I'm going to give this one coat of a white chalk paint, but you could also use acrylic paint. Once that's dry, I'm going to use a stencil that I found at Hobby Lobby that comes in a pack of 2, and some Scotch tape to place at the top and bottom to hold that in place. Using a Dollar Tree large sponge dauber and some spiced pumpkin paint, I am going to hold the ribs of the stencil down with one finger and then take this sponge dauber and just pounce it up and down until I have the entire pumpkin part of this stencil covered. For the stem, I'm going to use a small Dollar Tree sponge dauber and some celery green paint, and again try to hold those tiny pieces down as I am pouncing this up and down. While the paint is still wet, I'll go ahead and remove the tape at the bottom and top and try to lift my stencil straight up. Then I'm going to allow that time enough to dry. Using a fine-tipped black Sharpie marker, I decided to go around the outline of all of the painted portions. I didn't really like the way it looked, so I decided to go over it with the regular tip of the black Sharpie. Have you ever worked on a project and you kind of feel like the more you do, the more you really don't like the way it looks? Maybe you should have left well enough alone. But that's kind of how I felt after I got done using the regular tip of the black Sharpie marker. So I decided to keep working on it by taking some sandpaper, going over this to try to soften up some of the outline that I had just created. And then I'm going to go over that with a dry paper towel to remove any of that debris. I have a faux leather word cut out. I believe this came in a package from Hobby Lobby, and I want it to curve at the top to go along with the wood round. To do that, I'm going to add some hot glue just to the center portion of it. Let that set up, and then I can lift the left-hand side up, add some glue, stretch that out, and place it in place with the curve, and do the exact same thing on the right-hand side. I decided to go ahead and make a hanger for the back of this one since it did not come with a hanger, and I'm going to do that with some twine, hot glue, and a couple of pieces of ribbon to reinforce that twine. I still didn't like the way the pumpkin looked, so I'm going to take one of Dollar Tree's furniture markers. This is the color Cherry, and I decided to go around the outline, but as I did, it kind of filled in between the ribs of the pumpkin, that white painted part, because the tip is so large, and I kind of liked the way it looked. So I decided to go with that, fill those white areas in, add a little bit more of that furniture marker at the bottom, the top, and around the stem. Then I'm going to take a piece of 2.5-inch burlap wired ribbon. I cut that down to about 9.5 inches, and then using some 2.5-inch plaid ribbon, I cut that down just a little bit smaller. I am going to dovetail each end of these 2 pieces of ribbon, and then using a piece of twine, I can tie these 2 pieces together once they're gathered in the middle, just stacking the plaid on top of the burlap, and I'm going to attach this off to the side more towards where the hanger is on the wood round. I attach the bow directly to the twine hanger using the excess twine from the bow. Then I'll cut that excess twine off, and you guys, I still was not satisfied with the stem on this pumpkin. So I decided to fill it in with that cherry colored furniture marker and go ahead and blend that in down towards the pumpkin, and this is how it turned out. For this project, I'm using one of Dollar Tree's fall decor pieces. I'm going to remove that raffia bow, use my hairdryer to heat up the label on the back so I can easily remove that. And the wording on the front has a lot of glitter on it, so I'm going to take some sandpaper to go over that to remove all of the glitter to get it nice and smooth. Once I've wiped that debris off, I'm going to take an acrylic paint. This is called Country Twill. It's just a beautiful beige color. I'm going to paint this entire piece, including the outside edges, and it will take 2 to 3 coats to cover up this green. Once dry, it's going to look something like this. I'm going to take a piece of scrap fabric from Dollar Tree that I already had. I love that it already has this rough edge to it. I didn't do that, it came that way, but I love that little ragged look of it. This one measures about 10.5 inches by 5.25 inch. We're going to measure from the top piece down to about 1.5 inches and make a mark. Then we could place the rough edge of that fabric right where our mark is and hot glue that in place on the front. Flip it over to the side once that sets up, and try to keep your fabric going straight across as much as possible. Once that sets up, you can repeat that on the opposite side, and then again on the back side. So once you flip it over to the back, we're just going to glue one side down at a time, trying to keep it as straight just like it was in the front. Then we'll glue the other side down, and once that sets up right at the very top where the two pieces are open, where they overlap, you'll just want to add a little dot of hot glue to hold those two pieces together. Then we could flip it over to the front side, and where the stem is at the very top, we're going to gather the fabric together at the top of that stem. Take a piece of twine, wrap it around where you've gathered it. I'm going to double knot it and then tie just a very simple bow. Using a pencil, I'm going to draw the outline for 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth for our scarecrow. Then using some black acrylic paint, I'm going to fill in the eyes. I'm going to use a spiced pumpkin paint to fill in the nose. I'll use my hairdryer to help speed up the drying process. Then I'm going to take some white chalk paint, or you could use acrylic paint, to give the eyes some highlights and details, as well as give the nose some highlights. I'll use my hairdryer again to make sure that I dry all of that white paint, and then I have a Sharpie that has a fine tip edge and a regular tip. I'm going to use the regular tip to draw the outline of the mouth, make a few lines under the eyes, but then I'll use the fine tip to create some eyelashes as well as an outline around the nose. I decided to cut the bottom off of one of Dollar Tree's flowers. I'm going to glue that right in the center of the bow. Then I can go ahead and trim the twine bow tails down, and this is how he turned out. I hope you enjoyed today's projects, and if you have a favorite, please let me know in the comment section down below, because I always love to know which one is your favorite. If you haven't subscribed already, I would love you to click that subscribe button right below the video. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. Please take care, and I will see you guys next time.